You know what's funny? People think they're getting away with it. The lies, the manipulation, the backstabbing, gaslighting, fake smiles over dinner tables. They walk around like gods in their own little games, rewriting the rules, stacking the deck, clapping for themselves while someone else bleeds behind the curtain. And the best part, they actually believe no one sees it. Not the world, not the victims, not even the sky. But here's the twist. Someone was watching. Not the cops, not the neighbors. Bigger than that, the kind of eyes that don't blink, that don't miss, that don't forget. They wore the mask so well, didn't they? Polished, perfect, always knew what to say, when to cry, when to laugh, when to look just broken enough to get away with murder, literal or not. That's the thing about masks. They don't just hide faces, they hide intentions. And people, people believe what makes them comfortable. They don't want the truth. They want the performance. And so the mask gets applause. But you know what masks don't survive? Divine timing. Because eventually the curtain falls. And when it does, the silence gets loud. They thought they were untouchable, that they could control the narrative forever, smear your name, rewrite history, play victim in a play they wrote. But time, real time, divine time, it doesn't play by human rules. It doesn't rush. It waits, observes, smiles. Because truth doesn't need to shout. It knows the show ends the same way every time, with the mask slipping off when they least expect it. And what a beautiful fall it is. Not loud, not dramatic, just a moment. A glance. A crack in the voice, a wrong word at the wrong time, and suddenly the illusion they worked so hard to maintain begins to crumble because the thing they never calculated for, the moment when the universe, God, fate, karma, call it what you want, decides enough is enough. And when that moment comes, no charm, no manipulation, no crocodile tear can stop it. It's judgment dressed in silence. They walk around like cameras aren't rolling, like records aren't being kept. But up there, someone saw it all. Not just the actions, but the intentions. The part they thought they buried so deep no one could find it. The smirk after the lie. The pleasure in causing pain. The satisfaction of fooling everyone in the room. That's the real crime. The sickness behind the smile. And that's what gets remembered. Not the performance, the intention. So they keep up the act. Keep gaslighting, keep spinning, keep pretending they're the ones who were wronged. It's cute, really. Watching them drown in the fiction they created. But fiction's got a short shelf life, and divine timing, it's the author of the final chapter. It writes slow, but it writes accurate. Every lie, logged. Every betrayal, noted. Every smile used as a weapon, highlighted in red. And then comes the collapse. Slowly at first. A relationship fails, a secret leaks, a mask cracks mid-sentence. People start whispering, start noticing things they used to ignore. The cracks become holes, the holes become gaps, and through those gaps, the truth starts pouring in like light through broken glass, and suddenly, the whole world sees what you saw all along. They call it karma, they call it exposure, but it's more than that. It's divine scheduling. You can run your little show for years, sell the story, trick the audience, but eventually divine timing takes the mic and it doesn't stutter. It doesn't hesitate. It rips the mic from their hands and says, "Enough." No mask survives that moment. Doesn't matter how pretty it was, how many believed in it. When divine truth steps in, illusions shatter like glass under a boot. And the ones who laughed, who pointed fingers, who said you were the crazy one, now they're staring in silence, wondering how the golden child became the ghost, how the angel got caught red-handed, how the story flipped so fast, but it didn't flip fast. It was always upside down. It just took divine timing to turn the mirror around. Because when you play God, you better pray the real one isn't watching. But he always is. Every smirk, every scheme, every little harmless lie, every silent betrayal you screamed into your pillow while they smiled in public, it was all seen, and not by man, by something higher, something quieter, something that doesn't need evidence. It is the evidence. So when justice comes, don't expect fireworks, expect precision. Expect silence. Expect the exact thing they swore would never happen. Oh. God. Because no matter how long they dance in that mask thinking they own the stage, divine timing waits in the wings, smiling, watching, counting down. And when the cue comes, that mask doesn't just fall, it disintegrates. Silence doesn't mean blindness. People confuse quiet with ignorance. Like if you don't scream, you must not know. Like if you don't fight back, you must be weak. That's their first mistake. They think the silence means you didn't see it. The betrayal, the manipulation, the lies whispered through smiles and cloaked in concern. But you saw it. You felt it. Every knife, every game, every little performance played out in front of you like a puppet show. You just didn't clap. You didn't speak because you were watching, learning, letting the pieces move. Because silence isn't surrender, it's surveillance. And the louder they got, the more you saw. Funny, isn't it? The louder the lie, the clearer the truth behind it. But people only listen to volume, not substance. They believe the one who shouts first, the one who cries loudest. They never think the one sitting quiet in the corner might be the only one who actually knows what's going on. That's how they get comfortable. The liars, the actors, the manipulators. They take your silence as permission. They think, well, they're not saying anything, so I must have fooled them. Oh no, you weren't fooled. You were giving them rope, watching how far they'd run with it, seeing how deep they'd dig that hole with a smug smile on their face. Because sooner or later, silence shifts. It sharpens, cuts deeper than any scream. Because when the silent one finally speaks, it's already too late for the performance to change. They never expect that. They expect you to stay still, stay nice, stay numb. They mistake your grace for weakness. They mistake your patience for ignorance. But the truth is you saw everything. Every subtle insult dressed as a joke, every conversation that twisted your words, every time they told the story wrong on purpose just to paint themselves prettier, you heard it, you saw it, you felt it, and you smiled. Because silence holds power they'll never understand. While they were busy performing for the world, you were watching behind the curtain, taking notes, connecting dots, seeing patterns they thought were invisible. Because when someone's always lying, they forget how obvious it becomes. They start repeating themselves, getting sloppy, thinking no one's watching. But silence watches. Silence records. Silence doesn't need to shout to be deadly. And when the silence finally moves, when it finally speaks, it's not emotion, it's evidence. It doesn't shake, it doesn't beg, it doesn't need to prove a thing because it's already proven. The silence was the proof, the restraint, the endurance, the ability to hold it all in until the exact moment when the mask slips and their whole game collapses under the weight of what they thought no one saw. But someone did, not just you, something bigger, the one they forgot about, the one they thought was silent too. But see, just because you don't hear thunder doesn't mean the storm ain't coming. Just because lightning hasn't struck yet doesn't mean the sky isn't watching. They built their lies in front of heaven and thought they were hidden in shadows, but the shadows don't protect. They reveal when the time is right. So they laugh while they hurt you, smirk while they twist the knife, talk sweet while they destroy your name in rooms you weren't even invited to, but you stayed quiet, not because you didn't know, but because you did, because you didn't need to prove it yet. They think they're safe, they think they're smart, but they don't know silence has a memory sharper than any photograph. It remembers tone, eyes, shifts in energy. It builds a case in the dark while they dance in the light. That's the funny thing about silence. It lets people show you exactly who they are. No interruptions, no defenses, no distractions, just raw, unfiltered truth, wrapped in the lie they think is working. And by the time they realize the silence saw them, it's not silence anymore. It's judgment. It's reckoning. It's the sound right before the fall, the breath before the verdict, the final pause, before everything they built on that lie starts to crumble, slow and poetic, like it was waiting for this moment the entire time. Delay is not escape, it's setup. They walk around with that smirk, that casual little strut, like time's on their side, like they got away with it, like their lies aged into truth and their sins dissolved because the world didn't explode the next morning. They think if consequences don't come crashing down instantly, they've outsmarted the system. Oh, how they celebrate too early. See, the delay isn't forgiveness, it's foreplay. It's the long inhale before the blowback. And the longer it builds, the messier the collapse. They confuse the silence for safety, the pause for peace. They think because no one's kicking down the door they're untouchable. But justice doesn't wear a watch. It doesn't panic. It doesn't rush in shouting. It watches. It waits. It plans. Because real punishment doesn't tap on your shoulder, it drops through the ceiling when you're least expecting it, right in the middle of your victory dance. People love to pretend the universe forgot, that maybe what they did wasn't that bad, that maybe karma's out sick today. But no, karma's just meticulous, like a sniper. Not messy, not loud, surgical, precise. It doesn't want to just strike. It wants the moment to be perfect, the exposure to be public, the irony to be poetic, the downfall to be unforgettable. And that takes time. See, the delay is where the real damage happens, not to the victim, but to the villain. It gives them room to relax, to stop looking over their shoulder, to believe their own fantasy, that they're loved, that they're safe, that no one will ever connect the dots. And just when they think the past is buried, that's when the ground shifts. That's when the skeletons dig their way out. That's when the walls start whispering back. They always think justice will look like sirens and spotlights, but it often walks in like a friend, a quiet moment, a phone call, a mirror. It doesn't scream, it reveals. And that's the worst kind of reckoning, when it's not shouted at you but shown to you. When everything you tried to hide shows up in someone else's eyes. When the lie collapses under the weight of its own detail. When people stop clapping, not because they hate you, but because they see. They don't see the setup while it's happening. That's the beauty of it. They think they're building an empire, that the more time passes, the more protected they are. But the empire isn't made of bricks. It's made of glass. And every step they take, every lie they build on top of the last, every smug little celebration, it's all adding pressure. And you can only stack so much weight before the whole thing shatters. That's why delay is dangerous for them, because it doesn't just catch them off guard, it exposes them. Time reveals what people really are. And when truth finally arrives, it doesn't come alone, it brings receipts, evidence, patterns, witnesses. Things that weren't obvious at first, but over time, oh, they shine like blood on white sheets. But let them dance. Let them keep pretending. Let them enjoy the illusion while it lasts. That's part of the setup. Give them the rope. Let them weave it into a throne. Let them hang banners, throw parties, build a kingdom out of lies. Because when the drop comes, it's not just a fall. It's a spectacle, not just correction, but collapse. And the world loves a good collapse, especially when the pride was that loud. They'll scream, "Why now? Why me?" As if the timing is unfair, but the truth is, the delay was mercy. It was space. Space to confess, to reflect, to fix, but they used it to gloat. So now the setup ends and the sentence begins, not handed down by man, but by something far older. And when it moves, it doesn't knock, it breaks in. Because delay never meant escape. It meant build-up. It meant countdown. It meant justice was cooking something slow. And oh, does it taste better that way? Being misunderstood is part of becoming authentic. See, the moment you stop playing along, the masks start twitching. People don't know what to do when the script changes. You used to smile when they lied, nod when they mocked, laugh at your own pain just to keep the peace. But the second you stop performing, the crowd turns. Because your truth, your raw, unpolished, inconvenient truth, disrupts their illusion. And ooh, they don't like that, not one bit. They'll say, you changed. Say you're acting strange, say you're cold, difficult, angry, broken. But what they really mean is, you're not easy to control anymore. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped bending your back so they could walk taller. You stopped sacrificing your voice for their comfort. And that kind of shift, it shakes the whole room. Because people don't want real, they want familiar. Even if familiar is fake, toxic, soul-suffocating, at least they know how to handle it. But you, now that you're becoming you, a threat. Start small. A raised eyebrow, a question laced in sarcasm. You think you're better now? No, but you know better now. And that difference, it stings. 'Cause if you really found yourself, it means they never really had you. Not the real you, just the version you packaged, polished, and presented to be acceptable. And the real you, that one doesn't ask for permission. That one doesn't shrink. That one doesn't play small just to keep fragile egos intact. But being misunderstood, it's lonely. Because the moment you start speaking your truth, people hear attack, even if you whisper it, even if you say it with love. They hear judgment, not honesty, threat, not expression. Because your light, it exposes their shadows, and people would rather hate the mirror than face their reflections, so they turn, they twist, they project, and suddenly you're the problem. Not the years of pretending, not the silence that almost killed you. No. You daring to be whole, that's what gets them angry. Funny, isn't it? You spend your life trying to belong. Then one day you realize belonging that costs your identity isn't belonging, it's imprisonment. So you break free. And they call it rebellion. They say you've changed, that you've lost your mind, but you haven't lost it. You've found it. Dug it out from the rubble they buried you under. And now that you got it back, now that you're thinking clearly, they can't stand the clarity. Because you're not confused anymore. You're not asking for permission. You're not seeking approval. You're not clapping for abuse and calling it love. And without those chains, you walk different. You speak different. You breathe different. And people who only knew the shackled version of you, they don't recognize this version. So they call it fake, call it pride, call it ego, anything but what it really is. Freedom. But here's the twist. The more you become yourself, the less they understand you. The more you heal, the more foreign your presence feels in the rooms that once welcomed your wounds. You're not sad enough anymore, not desperate enough, not dependent enough. And without those weaknesses for them to manage, they don't know where to place you, so they push you away. Say you've changed. Say you've forgotten where you came from. But you didn't forget. You escape. Being misunderstood is the price of evolution. They only understood the version of you that kept quiet, that performed, that bled silently while smiling at the dinner table. But that version died. You buried it in truth, watered it with pain, and what rose from the grave wasn't polite. It was powerful, and power doesn't explain itself. It doesn't beg to be seen clearly, it simply is. And those who want to see it will adjust their vision. The rest, they'll label it madness, arrogance, delusion, anything to protect the fragile narrative that you were never meant to rise. But rise you did, and the air's thin up here, lonely, misunderstood, but real. And real? Real is rare. Real gets vilified, mocked, isolated, until it's undeniable, until the very people who called you lost are choking on your truth, not because you yelled it, but because you lived it, because you refused to shrink, because you chose discomfort over pretending, because you stopped translating your soul into a language that kept other people comfortable while you drowned in silence. Approval is the reward for staying invisible. They don't clap for truth, they clap for obedience. You want applause? Then don't rock the boat. Smile when you're bleeding, nod when you're disrespected. Stay quiet when you're screaming inside. That's the deal. That's the contract. Be palatable, be predictable, be small. And they'll love you for it. But the moment you take up space, real, unapologetic space, the applause dies, the love fades, because now you're a problem. They loved the version of you that asked for nothing, the one who kept the peace at your own expense, the one who apologized when they were wrong. That one got all the validation in the world. You could have been dying behind the eyes and they would have called you strong, because your pain was silent, your needs invisible, your truth buried. That's what they reward. That's what they celebrate. Not you, the performance of you. And the sick part is we learn this early. Learn to shrink in classrooms, at dinner tables, in churches, in friendships. Learn that being seen is dangerous, that attention comes with judgment, that standing out gets you labeled, so we fold, we dim, we mold ourselves into whatever makes them comfortable, and they say, look how well adjusted you are, but really we're just well trained. Then one day the training breaks, the mask slips. You speak when you're supposed to be silent. You say no when you're expected to say yes. You tell the truth, even though you know it'll ruin the whole damn vibe. And suddenly, you're difficult, dramatic, unreasonable, not because you were wrong, but because you stopped being invisible. They won't say it out loud, of course. They'll frame it as concern. You've changed. You're not like you used to be. What they really mean is, you're not easy to control anymore. You're not bending like you used to. You're not begging like you used to. You're not shrinking. And for people who only felt powerful around your silence, your voice is a threat. They say they want real, but real is messy. Real is inconvenient. Real says, I'm not okay when everyone wants you to smile. Real sets boundaries. Real says no. Real leaves the table. And for most people, that's just too much. Because if you're real, they have to be real too. And they're not ready for that. So the moment you stop performing, the stage empties, the fans leave, the approval dries up, and you're left with the silence of your own authenticity. Lonely, isn't it? No spotlight, no claps. Just you, raw and honest and awake. But that silence, that's where you meet you. Not the edited version, not the polished mask, you. And that's worth more than any applause from people who only loved your disappearance. But make no mistake, they'll try to pull you back. They'll dangle the approval like a bone. If you just go back to how you were, if you just laugh more, complain less, stop being so sensitive. And for a second, it's tempting. Because being invisible is easier, safer. No conflict, no judgment, no exile, just peace. You'll trade your identity for their acceptance. And that's the most expensive approval you'll ever buy. But here's the twist. When you stay visible, even when it costs you everything, something wild happens. You start attracting people who see you. Not the act, not the role, you. And their love, it's quiet, it's deep, it's not performative. They don't need you to shrink, they don't ask you to pretend, they meet you where you are, scars and all. But you only find them by losing the ones who needed you to stay small. So if the applause has stopped, maybe it's not a failure, maybe it's a sign that you've stepped off the stage, that you've left the circus, that you're no longer available for love that requires your disappearance. Let them miss the version of you that made them comfortable. Let them mourn the ghost you used to be. Because the living version of you, the bold one, the loud one, the real one, doesn't need their permission to exist. Shock is a symptom of suppressed truth. You walk in just being real for once, no filter, no rehearsal, and suddenly everyone's gasping like you flipped the whole table, because you did. Not out of rage, not for attention, but because the truth was rotting under that polite silence. And you finally said it. The thing nobody was brave or stupid enough to say. And the moment it leaves your mouth, boom, you're the villain, not because you lied, but because you didn't. That's the game. Keep quiet, keep peace. But it's fake peace, fragile peace, a house of cards balanced on secrets, guilt, and fake smiles. And when you tell the truth, the whole thing shakes. Not because it's wrong, but because it was never built to survive honesty. They weren't ready to hear it, but they knew. Deep down, they knew. They just hoped you'd never say it out loud, because once truth enters the room, it doesn't leave quietly. It echoes, it stains. People say, you shocked me. No, you didn't. You reminded them of what they already knew but buried. You peeled back the wallpaper, they painted over the mold. You opened the window in a house full of smoke. You lit the match in a room soaked in denial. The truth was always there, crawling under the floorboards, scratching behind the smiles. But everyone got so good at pretending, they stopped hearing it. And now that you've named it, exposed it, dragged it into the light, they flinch, like it's the first time, but it's not. See, the real shock isn't what you said, it's that you dared to say it. You refused to carry the silence. You refused to pretend that everything was okay when it was bleeding from every corner. And in a world addicted to pretending, honesty feels like violence. It scrapes, it burns, It makes people look at themselves, and most can't stomach their own reflection, so they point at you instead. Call you rude, call you dramatic, call you unstable, anything but accurate. Because if you're right, then their whole act collapses. They call it drama, but really it's just exposure, and exposure makes cowards uncomfortable. You took the mask off the monster, not to destroy it, but to stop feeding it, and they panicked, because the monster, it looked familiar, a little too familiar. Maybe it wore their smile. Maybe it sounded like their voice. Maybe it sat with them every day and they never had the guts to call it out. But now you did, and that makes you the dangerous one. But here's the twist. They're not mad at what you said. They're mad it came from you. The one they thought they trained, the quiet one, the agreeable one, the nice one, the one who never made waves. And now, you're not just making waves, you're the storm. And storms terrify people who built their safety on denial. You didn't change, you just stopped lying. And they're not used to that. So they act shocked, act betrayed, act like the villain walked in, when really the villain's been hosting the party this whole time. You just turned on the lights. You said, hey, this stinks, and now everyone's acting like you brought the smell. But that stink, it's been there, rotting under the rug, hidden in polite conversations, decorated with fake gratitude and forced forgiveness. And now that you've pointed it out, everyone's scrambling to pretend they don't see it. Let them scramble, let them gasp, let them play innocent. Their reaction isn't your responsibility. You didn't start the fire. You just refuse to warm yourself by it anymore. And that refusal, that's what shocks them. That someone finally said no more. That someone finally said truth over comfort. That someone finally dropped the smile and showed their teeth, not to bite, but to stop being bitten. Shock is just the body reacting to sudden clarity. And clarity hurts when you've been in the dark too long. It stings the eyes, rattles the cage, but it's not cruel. It's necessary, because without that shock, people stay asleep. They keep swallowing poison and calling it peace. They keep dancing in burning rooms and calling it home. And someone has to wake them up. Someone has to pull the plug on the fantasy. And yeah, they'll hate you for it, at first, maybe forever. Because you reminded them that truth still exists, that pretending isn't healing, that silence isn't strength, that compliance isn't love. And when you walk away from the lie, it doesn't matter how long you stayed silent. What matters is that you finally spoke. And that sound is louder than the years they spent ignoring it.